We'll be in Matthew chapter 25 will be our main text this morning. If you want to turn in your Bibles, it'll be on the screen as well. And we're on this series talking about going back, and we've each week talked about something different. This is kind of a season of going back to things where summer vacation, maybe we took a vacation, and it doesn't always have to be this time of year, but this is when a lot of it happens, especially if you have school-age children in your family. You kind of might have a vacation or something like that, and then there's a period where you come back home. You've been gone for a while and you go back home. Or you've been like we have been a summer break, and then we go back to school. If you work in the schools, but even if you work somewhere else, it's definitely also a time of year when people are going back to work. But there's other times when you go back to work when you've been on vacation, or maybe you've been between jobs and you get a new job and now you're back to work. Maybe you finish your education. I mean, education is a form of work, but maybe you finish that and then you go get your first job or your first job after your schooling, and you're kind of, you're back at work. And this morning, the topic's going to be back to church, because this is also the time of year when a lot of people decide, and I think it's all this going back stuff, back to school, being back home, going back to work, that a lot of people do decide to start going back to church. I was going to pick on them. I don't see them in here right now, but if you didn't get a chance to see them, Emily and Wesley, Zach and Emily Wesley are here this morning. There's the members of ours that moved to Fort Smith this summer, but they're back to church, at least back to church with us this morning. And the Wednesday night, it was announced earlier, Wednesday night we started this meal from 5:30 to about 6:20 to try to make it a little bit easier for families, especially families with children. I mean, they're getting off school, they're getting off work, and you're running around like a crazy person trying to get stuff done. And we thought maybe having a meal here would make it a little bit easier for those who are coming here, that, okay, I don't have to either go cook, or I don't have to buzz through a drive-through or something like that to feed my family. And there'll be a time here that we can sit down and hang out. And so we definitely invite you to participate in that if you want to. But we also, this past Wednesday night, we had a family meeting. So we had our meal, and then during our what we call our regular Wednesday night time that starts at 6:30, we had a family meeting. And this wasn't one of those bad family meetings, probably when you're growing up, your parents came in like, we're going to have a family meeting. And it usually meant that you did something wrong, or something's just been chaos, and the parents are going to get together with the rest of the family, and they're going to tell you, like, here's what you need to do. Like, you need to clean your room more. You need to, all those dirty dishes that you're leaving all over the house, you need to not do that anymore. And so we're going to have a family meeting to discuss that. Well, our family meeting Wednesday night was not that type of family meeting. It was more like an exploration kind of family meeting. Like, let's ask some questions. Let's spend some time in thought. And the main topic of this discussion was, how do we, as a group of Jesus followers, how do we move in a direction that is basically like moving from talk to action? How do we move from, it's good to study. We do a lot of studying, right? Bible study, stuff like that. It's good to do that. But how do we move from study and discussions to our feet actually hitting the road, going and doing the things that we talk about? It's probably a question maybe that's entered your mind a time or two as you've gone through life. So we spend a lot of time talking about the good things that people should do, the good things that Christians will do in this world, how we're going to partner with God and others to make the world a little bit better. Now, how are we, as a body of believers, going to move in that direction? Now, some of it happens individually. I see this thing happen in front of me. I'm part of a conversation. I see somebody that's in some kind of need, and I react to that, hopefully in a positive, loving, kind of way. But there's also things as a body as a whole that we can do to move together in that direction. So we spent that Wednesday night discussing that topic, and I shared several verses with the group as we were talking, and there's one that I want to share with you this morning that's going to lead into our discussion, and that's the one from Matthew chapter 25. It's a little bit of a long reading. I don't know if it's terribly long, but it's a little bit long, a little bit repetitive. But I want to read the whole thing to you so you get the context of what's going on, and then we're going to talk about one little bitty section of that, okay? So Matthew 25. It says, when the Son of Man, talking about Jesus, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. So there's going to be this separating thing going on. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, that's the sheep, he says, come, you who are blessed by my Father. He says, take your inheritance, which is the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. So there's this kingdom that's been being prepared since the beginning of the world. And I look at the things we read in the Bible about God's creative power and things like that. We can read in the book of Revelation, John had these visions of what heaven might sort of look like, and he's trying to describe it to us in like terms that we can understand, like streets of gold, and the gold's so pure it's almost transparent. There's these big gates, and each gate is like a giant pearl, things like that. I don't know if that's literally what it is, but John is trying to explain those in a way that we could understand. It's like, okay, I know what a pearl is, and I know what a gate is, so you're talking like, oh, wow, and I know what gold is, and I know what transparent is, so he's trying to explain something that's kind of almost otherworldly. It's so majestic, it's so pure, it's so massive, it's so whatever. He's trying to bring it down into words that we can handle. And that's what Jesus, in these verses I'm reading, this is Jesus talking. He says, take this inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. So this is a big deal, right? Basically because, he says, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, and they will say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or in need of clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? They're like, I don't remember us doing any of that stuff for you. And then he will say to those, then the king replied, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And when he says brothers and sisters, he's talking about all of humanity. Remember that at the beginning, the Son of Man was a title that he carried quite often, the Son of Man. And we don't have time to go into all of that, but the basic gist is he's the Son of God. He's this eternal being, but he's the one who is born of humans, from Mary, right? That's why he carried this title, because in all call it the spiritual realm, he's the only one that's been born of a human, so that's why he carries that title. And so all the other humans are his brothers and sisters. Verse 41. Then he will say to those on his left, so remember he divided them. So that was talking to these people. Sorry, folks, now he's talking to you guys, okay? Maybe. We'll see. Then he said to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed. I'm sorry. I'm not really talking about you guys over here. Make sure we're good with that. You folks over here, don't look down at these guys. We're not really talking about them, okay? Metaphorically here. Depart from me, he says, you who are cursed in the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and he says, you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me, he says. They will also answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or in need of clothes or sick or in prison and not help you? And he will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, he says, you did not do for me. So I want to focus this morning on one of those acts. There's a whole bunch of things listed there that we do when we partner with God and others to make the world a little bit better. We partner with God in any time that we feed hungry people. That's mentioned in there. We feed hungry people. Anytime we clothe those who are needing clothes. Anytime we look after sick people, anytime we visit people who are imprisoned, and I think that can be jail or prison. That can also be when we visit people who are like shut in. They're kind of imprisoned in their home because physically they can't get up and get out. But the one I want to talk about today, as we consider that this is a time of year, and there's other times throughout the year, but specifically focusing on it right now, a time when people come back to church, I want to talk about that one about I was a stranger and you invited me in. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Now you may think, hey David, if they're coming back to church, they're probably not a stranger, right? We've probably seen them before. Well, again, their back to church moment may not be the same as the back to church moment you've experienced. And so some of that just depends on what's been going on in their life. Sure, there's people who may not have been here for a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months. They're gone for a couple of months, and we're like, oh, we would say, oh, you're back, the Wesleys. They've been gone for a few months. That's because they moved. But we see them, and we go, oh, they're back. Yay. I gave Zach a hug this morning. I was excited to see him. Now, the other cases may be where someone hasn't been to church since they were young. Maybe the last time they really attended church in some kind of ongoing fashion was when they were young and they still lived in their parents' home. There's lots of, I don't even know if we call them children, I guess they're children of their parents, but lots of young adults, and I myself included when I was that age, kind of have these wilderness phases sometimes in their, like kind of when they get out of high school and in their early 20s and things like that we kind of wander around, and sometimes we wander away from meeting with a body of believers, at least on an ongoing basis. So that could be the case of some. And there also is the case of, we say going back to church, but maybe some people are going to a church, like really for the first time ever. Like they've just never, maybe they kind of know about Jesus, they've heard about Jesus, or they're curious about Jesus, and they think, well, if I go to a church, I can find out a little bit more. And so they might be coming to church, not coming back to church. But in any case, it's kind of the same scenario. In any way we may think about it, inviting strangers includes inviting those people who are coming back to church or inviting those people who have never been a part of a church before. And what we're talking about here, again, condense it down to one word, and that is hospitality. We're talking about hospitality, at least in consideration of our weekly gathering. Now, there's another kind of hospitality where we might invite somebody over to our house or something like that, but I want to talk about, again, in the context of coming back to church and what we do here. So hospitality is it's the quality or disposition of receiving and treating guests and strangers in a warm, friendly, generous way. That's what hospitality is. Treating strangers, treating guests in a warm and friendly way, in a generous way. And I want to illustrate all of this through, honestly, what is quite a hilarious story from Sharon and I, and I meant to ask her, Sharon, when did we go? This is the Ritz-Carlton story. We went to was it like 2000-ish, somewhere around there? Okay, yeah, it was about halfway through my Navy career. We had gone to a military banquet. So we'd have these military banquets at different times of the years, and so there's this banquet, we come to it. One of the things they did to entice people to come was that they would have door prizes, and so door prizes would be like this big screen TV or an Xbox or things like that. And Sharon and I just happened to, you kind of go in, you fill a little thing, you put your name in the hat or whatever, and they draw out names. Well, they drew out our name, and Sharon and I won like a 3-night stay at the Ritz-Carlton. I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard of the Ritz-Carlton or been to the Ritz-Carlton, but there's a reason that the first part of that name sounds a lot like rich, right? It's the Ritz, R-I-T-Z, but we might as well just call it the Ritz-Carlton because this place was magnificent. This place was one of the biggest, nicest, ornate hotels that we had ever been in. I think it costs like $300 to $500 a night to stay in one of these places. I mean, I was glad we won it, because we would have never stayed there on our own had we not won this, this trip. And so we go to the Ritz-Carlton, and to try to give you an idea, this massive hotel, the one we went to, I think, was outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in this kind of countryside, and there was a golf course, and there was a huge lake and all this stuff. I mean, the columns on the sides of the building all have these really intricate and detailed, ornate decorations. Here's the best one to give you an idea. Inside the kind of, you got the main lobby area, and then you turn left to go down this long hallway towards, I think it was the elevators or something, and down this hallway that looked like it was probably a football field long. I mean, this hallway was huge and super, super wide. And it had this hardwood floors that were like in pristine condition. And it was sort of a dark hallway, but it had these spotlights lighting up different areas. And to the right, as you're walking down the hallway, about every 5 yards, 10 feet or so, I don't know, something like that, every 10 feet or so, there was an antique buffet. Now, guys, you probably don't know what this is, but a buffet is like a fancy cabinet where you keep fancy dishes in. Okay, you with me? All right. An antique buffet. But this antique buffet was like in mint condition. It looked like it was brand new, but it was obviously very, very old. Well, there was one every 10 feet. There was probably 50 or 100 of them down this hallway, every 10 feet. And on top of this pristine antique buffet, on top of it was like it wasn't like a doily, but there's some kind of cloth there, and there was like a plate, and then there was a vase. I think it was too nice of a place to call it a vase. I think it was a vase. And it had a little vase there, and inside the vase was this one orchid, like this one flower, single stem orchid, just perched up there. All of them were different colors, and there was a light from the ceiling that shone just on this orchid to just kind of highlight it. And you're just like, wow, that's just the most beautiful little flower I've ever seen, like the healthiest flower, like no flower that I've ever taken care of in my life. This is a nice flower. And you go about 10 feet, and you go, wow, there's another one, and it's just as nice. Like Cher goes on vacation, and I'm lucky if I can keep the garden alive, right? And I'm like, here's these little tender, delicate flowers, and there's one of them on every single one of these buffets with a little light shining on them, and they're beautiful, pristine, teeny tiny, delicate things. And above that, on the wall, are these huge oil paintings, massive oil paintings with frames that look like the frame is this thick. And the oil is so thick, it's like sticks out about a foot, not really, but I mean, it's just this really detailed and colorful, beautiful paintings. And there's another spotlight above that shining on those. So imagine you're walking down this sort of dimly, not too dim, but this sort of dimly lit hallway with all this fancy furniture, and on top of it's this beautiful little flower, and above that, the spotlights are attracting your eyes to that. That's just one hallway in this magnificent hotel that Cher and I are going to go stay at for 3 days, or 3 nights, for free. Well, at that time, so this is like 2000, 2001, 2002 maybe time frame, and I'm driving like an old 1991 Honda Accord. I think it might have been older than that. It might have been like an 87 or something. This thing had been rode hard and put up wet. I mean, there was no love for this car other than the fact that it got me transportation to and from work. And I think it was the nicest of the 2 cars we took, so that's the reason we took that one. Well, here we come. We drive over towards Atlanta. We get to the Ritz-Carlton, and we pull up. You can kind of see the majesty. I think like an orchestra started playing as we were getting closer to it, right? And this immense building is coming over the horizon as we get closer to it, and we're like going, wow. And we already know the Ritz-Carlton's a fancy place, and we're thinking about, hey, you know what? We don't have a lot of money. And we're going to stand at this fancy place. As we're driving up, we see the signs that are pointing us to valet parking. Valet parking, right? We don't want to have anything to do with valet parking. Because valet parking requires what? A tip, right? Every time you get out and every time you get in the car, you got to give them some money. And we're like, we don't have a lot of money. And we're thinking to ourselves, and how much money would we give them anyway? Do we give them $1? Is that like an insult? Is that like leaving a penny for your waiter at your But if I have to give $5 every time I get out of my vehicle and another $5 every time I get in, we're not going to be able to afford this trip. So we're like, okay, valet parking, we're not doing that. So we kind of grow up and we start getting closer to the carport area, and we decide to turn around. Like we don't even go through the carport. We kind of make this U-turn. We go back, like I think I saw a parking lot over there, and we drive over and we pull into this parking lot. We pull in this parking space, and we're sitting there, and the engine's still kind of running. And we're thinking about, okay, we'll grab our bags and we'll get our stuff. Do we have our vouchers for our free night stay? And right about then, we get this little knock on our window. And I look out, and there's a guy like in a tuxedo, and he's standing there like this. And he's looking at me, and he goes, like roll down the window and talk to me. Now, this was the moment that I had dreaded the most. Because in my early 90s, broken down, real hard, put up wet Honda Accord, the weather stripping on the window had kind of been all dried and cracked, and it was a manual crank. And so it looks something like this. Hi. And he's standing there and he goes, sir, this is how they all talked at the Ritz-Carlton. Sir, valet is over here. And I'm like, oh, no, we're good. We'll just park right here. We can carry our own bags. We don't need any help. We're good to go. No, we're fine. Thank you, though. That's a very generous talk. No, sir, really, please come up to valet. I'm like, we really don't want to. We're fine. We're already parked right here. Sir, this is employee parking. Please come up to valet. I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, we'll be right up there. Roll the window back up, and we're just like, oh no. And so Cher starts fumbling through her purse to see if we can find some loose bills or something like that. We back out and we drive around and we pull up to valet parking. Of course, as soon as we pull up, what do? They encircle the car, they grab the door handles, they open them up, and we're like, oh wow, this is nice or whatever. I get out, I start heading for the trunk where our luggage is, and start, get my keys and stuff. He goes, oh no, sir, we'll take care of that. Your luggage will meet you in your room. I'm like, wow, it's going to meet us in our room? Like our luggage is going to grow legs and it's just going to walk. I'm like, how's it going to know what room we're in? I don't even know what room we're in. Hey, he goes, sir, it'll be fine. Please just give me your keys. I'm like, okay. So I give him his keys. I think I threw a couple dollars at him. No, I don't know. I think I gave him some money or something. And then we go inside. We talk to actually one of the, I don't know what you call them, maybe bellmen or valet people. One of them escorts us in. And they're like, right this way, sir, madam. And they come in, they walk us over. This is so-and-so, and she will help you get settled into your room. And so she's like the hostess. I think they probably called her the maitre d' or something like that. I don't know. But so she gets us all set up. We go, here's our little free vouchers. This is why we're here. And she tells us, you'll be in room 317. She tells us a few other things. And then she says, at 7 p.m., there is social hour in the promenade. There will be hors d'oeuvres and brandy and champagne or something like that. And we're like, oh, okay. Thank you. What's social hour? What do you do at social hour? What do we wear? I mean, we bought like shirts and flip-flops. We're just going to go into Atlanta and go see the Coca-Cola Museum. I mean, that's what we're doing here. And we're like, social hour in the promenade. I'm like, what's the promenade? I don't even know. And then she's like, she motions to another guy, and she's like, so-and-so will show you to your room. We're like, okay. So she hands the key to him, not to us. Right? She hands the key to him. I'm like, isn't this our room? Anyway, we follow him. We get in the elevator. He opens the door. He pushes the button. He lets us out of the elevator. He escorts us to our room. He unlocks the door. He opens the door like this, and in your room, madam, and sir, right? And so we go in, and it is a nice room. It is a nice room, and guess what's in the room? Our luggage. Not only is our luggage in the room, our luggage has already been our clothes have been taken out of our luggage and put into the drawers, and our luggage is just sitting there open, like all we got to do is close it and throw it into the closet. And he stands there, and he's like, is everything to your liking? I'm like, yeah, everything's to my liking. This place is amazing. Some of you guys want to come do laundry at our house? It'd be awesome, right? I think Cher would love it. And so, and he kind of stands there for a minute, sort of like, is everything to your liking? And his hand stays like this for a really long time. And I'm like, to my liking. Yes, it's to my liking. So I'm scrounging for some more money, and I don't know what I gave him. And so he leaves, the door shuts, and Cher and I just collapse on the bed. We're like, poof. And we're sitting there thinking, we're like, do we want to go to the social hour thing? I mean, but it's like I don't want to overdress. I guess I did have like some khaki pants or something, but it's like I don't want to overdress, and I don't want to underdress. And what do you do at social hour? What do we say to people? What do we talk? I don't know. And so we sit in our room for a little bit debating. I think we finally got to the point where we're not going to, that sounds nice, but we're not going to social hour because I don't know what's going to happen there. But a little bit later, the phone rings. The phone rings, answer, hello. And he's like, Mr. Russell, this is Victor down in Valet. Oh, it's Victor from Valet. Victor down in Valet. We seem to have an issue with your automobile. And I'm like, an issue? What kind of issue? Well, we can't get it out of park, and it's still in the valet drive-through, whatever they called it. And I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell y'all because you opened the door and you rushed us inside and all this kind of stuff. I forgot to tell him that my road hard beat up, whatever Honda had a problem with the gear shift. And some of you may or may not know this, but you don't see it as much. I think it's hidden by a little snap-in panel, but it's a automatic, park, reverse, neutral, drive, all that, right? It's an automatic, but there's a little keyhole right next to the shifter. If you didn't know what these are for, you're going to learn something new today. If you take the key for your car and you push it down in there, you don't have to turn it, but you push it down a little bit, and there's like a little lever. It kind of pops, and it releases the shifter. For some reason, the little latch on the handle would not release it out of park, and so it'd just be stuck in park. So I'm on Victor from Valet, on the phone with him. I'm like, okay, Victor, here's what you got to do. You got to take the ignition key. You got to put it in that little hole next to the gear shifter, and you got to shift it to neutral. You take the key out, you put it in the ignition, you turn the key on, and then the car will start, and then you can just pop it down into drive, and you can take it wherever you want, or reverse, or whatever. Just once it goes into park, it's not coming out. And there's this long pause from Victor from Valet. Very well, Mr. Russell. Have a good day. Click. I'm like going, that's just a little bit of our experience at the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, the Ritz-Carlton was super, super nice, but that was the kind of thing that we were dealing with. And I tell that story to illustrate this when we're talking about coming back to church, especially for new people, especially for people maybe who have never been here before. The first time someone goes to church, whether it's here or somewhere else, the first time someone goes to a church, it can feel a lot like our experience at the Ritz-Carlton. It can feel a lot like our experience at the Ritz-Carlton. Not because, especially in our case, not because we're some high-class, highfalutin social hour church, right? It's not that. It's all based on this fear of the unknown. It can feel like going to the Ritz-Carlton because when you get to church, you get to this church maybe you haven't been to in a long, long time or you've never been to, you don't know what to do. Like I don't even know how to get in the front door. I don't know how parking works here. I don't know how the people who attend this church are going to feel about me driving up in my car that's needed a new muffler for about 3 months, right? Now we may say, oh no, that's not going to be a problem. Now put yourself in that person's shoes. You're like, I just don't know. And what do they wear? It's like social hour. What do I wear? Are they a dress-up church? Are they a dress-down church? If they're dressed down, how down? Can I wear shorts? Should I not wear shorts? What if I wear a suit? Is that too much? And these are the things that go through people's minds as they think about possibly going to a church, again, especially a church that they've never been to before. What about the lingo? What about the language? Everybody at the Ritz-Carlton spoke a little differently than we did. There's this fear that what if I say the wrong thing? What if I use the wrong lingo? What if I use the wrong kind of language? And so that those types of fears hold us back. That they may be like, what if I don't know the songs? Right? What if they sing in some weird a cappella thing that I've never heard of before, right? If they're expecting a band or something, they might be like, whoa, what's this, right? What if I don't know the songs? What if I don't know the words to the songs? Are they going to stand up? Are they going to sit down? And if so, how do I know when to do that? Are they going to pray? Are they not going to pray? I mean, they're probably going to pray at a church, but what's that going to look like? Is there going to be a scripture reading? Is it going to be like one of those group reading things where you like somebody says something and everybody replies, and somebody says something and everybody replies? I almost did that this morning just for fun. But these are the real, no-kidding fears, and I would be willing to bet that you've also experienced those same kind of concerns anytime. You could have grown up a Christian. You could have gone to church your whole life. You could have been in a particular denomination, and you were always part of that group. You kind of got the basic gist of it. But when you move to a new town and you go to a new church, even if it's in the same kind of group of churches that you've grown up with, there's still this kind of anxious, concerning fear of like, what am I going to get, right? What am I going to get when I show up? What's going to happen when I walk in the door? How are these people going to react to me, and how am I going to be? So these are the types of things that get in the way of people coming to church all the time. And what's funny, notice what none of it is, for the most part. I mean, there might be a little bit about, but most of it doesn't seem to be founded on what you believe and what you don't believe. I mean, those could be some issues about language we use and we don't use, right? But most of it is just fear of these social expectations. Fear of social expectations. That's primarily what keeps people from coming to a church who are interested. Now, there's some caveats there, but for people who are interested in thinking, maybe I want to get plugged into a church, it's fear of social expectations. That's what keeps them out. That's what keeps them on guard. And a lot of it is they're afraid. They're afraid that we'll judge them, to be perfectly honest. They're afraid that we'll judge their attire, right? That what they wear is not up to the standards of what we would expect. That's a genuine concern that they would have. That maybe we'll judge them because they don't know the right lingo. That maybe they'll say something wrong. They'll say something wrong that seems out of place. And then we'll get this awkward, like, oh, I can't believe so-and-so, this person said that, who's a stranger. And they're afraid that we'll judge them and that we'll look down on them for these types of things. And so my question for you this morning, and it's part of the challenge for this week, is to consider our time at church and to seriously ask ourselves this question: will we only care about ourselves? Will we only care about ourselves? To the point that, I will only care as long as I get what I want. As long as when I come here to church, as long as I get what I want, or I get what I need, or things are the way I think they should be, as long as that happens, I'll be satisfied. Am I only concerned that I'll be happy? Am I only concerned that as long as everything is okay with me, as long as I am comfortable, that's what's important? I mean, after all, why should we invest in others beyond what is socially required of us? Why should we invest in others beyond what is socially required of us? Because that's what we typically do, to be honest. That's what I typically do. If they talk to me, I will be kind and I will talk back to them. Right? That's what's socially expected of me. If someone says hello, I will say hello back. If someone asks a question, I'll do my best to answer it. But is that the limit of what we're going to do? That's being kind, and being kind is good. I want to make sure you don't hear me wrong. Being kind is good, but I'm also wondering, what can I do, what can we do to take that a step further? And I think the step further from kindness, doing what would be socially required of us, that's kindness. Are we willing to go a step further and be hospitable? Let me contrast these two for a little bit with you. Talk about kindness versus hospitality. And again, I want to make sure I'm clear about this. Both of these are good. But I think hospitality is way, way, way better. Being hospitable. Kindness says, welcome to our church. But hospitality says, I'm glad you're here. Can I get you a coffee? Can I get you a donut? Let me show you around. Do you have any questions? Is there anything I can do to to help put you at ease. I don't know you. I suspect maybe it's your first time or one of your first times here. Is there anything I can do to put you at ease? Both are good, but one is better. Kindness says, you're welcome to sit anywhere you want. Empty auditorium. You're welcome to sit anywhere that you'd like to sit. Hospitality says, come over here and sit with us. Come sit with me. I'd love to have you come sit with us. Tell me about your family. This is my spouse. These are our children. This is my grandmother, whatever. Who's with you? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your kids. What are they up to? That's hospitality. Kindness says, the children's classes are over there. You just go to the back of the auditorium, you hang a right. It's kind of the children's class area, and the classes are over there. I'm sure you can find them. Hospitality says, let me go with you. Let me walk back there with you and help you find the classes for your children. Let me introduce you to their teacher. Let me ask you, help answer any questions you might have about classes to help set you at ease. Kindness says at the end, it was good to see you. Hope you come again, something like that. Hospitality says, hey, we're going to eat at Cracker Barrel after we get done today. Would you like to come with us? We'd love to have you come with us. Hospitality says, hey, you know what? It would be great if we got together this week. I don't know what your lunch schedule looks like for work, but maybe we could get together at some place here in town and get together for lunch so I could get to know you a little bit better. Hospitality says, you know what? On Tuesday, we're having Taco Tuesday at our house with our family. And I know you're a visitor and you're new here. And I know maybe you haven't picked a church home yet, and this may or may not be it. We'd love to have you over to our house for Taco Tuesday. We'd love to have you. Come on over. Kindness is being kind, and it is good. And in some ways, though, it is limited to this social expectation. If someone interacts with me, I will respond to them in a way that is kind. But hospitality is so much more. Hospitality is walking with someone so that they don't feel uncomfortable, and that's a challenge. It takes some work to do that. Hospitality is assuring someone who's never been in our setting before that they are accepted and that they are welcome and that they shouldn't be afraid of what they're wearing or whatever. Hospitality is more than just inviting someone into our building or being kind when they get in here. But hospitality is inviting someone into our lives. And I think that's the big difference between hospitality and kindness. Kindness is kind of the social expectation that we will be with people, and kindness is always good. It's always good to be kind. But taking it a step further, hospitality is doing more than just what's socially expected or required of us. It's inviting people in to our lives, like really into our lives, not just kind of some surface level thing. The people at the Ritz-Carlton, they were always kind. They were always kind. But in some ways, they were not always hospitable. And I don't think being kind and being hospitable are exactly the same thing, because we look at that verse back that we read in Matthew 25, that whole section of verses. There's a whole bunch of things, but the one we're focusing on this morning is this idea that a stranger was welcomed in. A stranger was welcomed in, and I think this is more than just welcoming them into our building, but it's welcoming them into our lives. Because if we only welcome them into our building, it's like, hi, good to see you. Service is over, bye, see you next week. And they're gone. And we have no other interactions with them at all. And then the next Sunday we see them again, and we say, hi. And then service is over, and we say, bye, see you next time, and they're gone. And then if they're gone for 3 or 4 weeks or 2 or 3 months, it's really not a big deal, because we haven't invested anything into them. But if we begin investing our lives, if we begin really welcoming people into our lives beyond just this setting, but even in this setting as much as we can beyond just being kind, I think we're doing something that's much more profitable. And not just for us. This is not like church growth strategy kind of stuff. That's not why I'm talking to you about this. It's about being the hands and feet of Jesus. It's about partnering with God, partnering with others in this room to do what we can to help people feel really, really, really welcome here. beyond just what's socially expected, far beyond, by being hospitable and inviting them into our lives. So that's the challenge this week, and next week, and the following week, and Wednesday nights, and things like that. This topic obviously can go a lot of other directions, but I really wanted to focus on this idea that at this time of year, there's a lot of people who are coming back to church. And it also may happen 6 months from now. The only thing that scares me the most about this lesson is that we won't talk about it again for a year or two. And 2 months from now, everyone will forget what I've said here, right? Some of y'all will forget by this afternoon. I will probably forget by this afternoon. We'll forget what was said here, what was discussed here. And 2 months from now, it won't make any difference to the visitor that shows up at our door. And I want us to do everything in our power to invite them into our lives and to be hospitable so that they do not have a Sharon David Ritz-Carlton experience when they come here. It might tell a fun story someday, but I'd rather them tell this fun story about how scared they were and how relieved they were once they finally got here. Okay? So, I don't know, maybe put in your phone, you pull out your phone and put in your calendar and like make a little like reoccurring weekly thing on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock that says like, be hospitable, welcome the stranger in, or something like that. And then every Sunday it'll pop up on your phone like, oh yeah, welcome the stranger in, welcome the stranger in. We want to welcome people in. Let's pray and we'll be done. Lord, we thank you for blessing us. We thank you for your son's example in his life. And we pray, Lord, that we will be hospitable to people that we encounter in our lives, and especially in the case where people may decide to start coming to our worship services, that they decide to I know we use the term, it's not completely accurate, but to come to church, that we will be people who are warm, who are inviting, who are kind, but go well beyond the social expectations and what's socially required of us, and that we will be people of true hospitality and help people who might be nervous about being here to be more comfortable, that we'll be kind, that we'll be patient, that we'll be understanding, and that whatever they happen to be wearing, whatever language they might happen to use, whether or not they know how we kind of do things here, that those will not be the things that we hold as important, but that we will see in them a reflection of you, that they were created in your image and we should value them. So help us in that endeavor. Help us to be your people, whether it's here at this building or whether it's out in town, that we will shine the light of Jesus in our lives and in our world, making the world a little bit better than it is now. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen. All right. Well, thank y'all.